Have you ever noticed that our modern world sets you up for a war you can never win? It's the war against failure. From the moment we're young, we're taught that failure is a verdict, a final, shameful judgment on our worth. A bad grade is a sign of insufficient intelligence. A failed business venture marks you as a poor strategist. A broken relationship means you are somehow unlovable. We are conditioned to see setbacks not as events, but as identities. We don't just experience failure, we become a failure. And so we live in a state of constant low-grade anxiety, terrified of the next misstep, the next market downturn, the next unexpected obstacle that might expose us. This is a rigged game. It's a life sentence of looking over your shoulder. But what if I told you that this entire framework is built on a lie? What if failure isn't the enemy? What if it's merely data? What if it's the raw material for building a mind so resilient, so calm, so powerful that external events lose their ability to shatter you? This isn't a New Age motivational trick. This is the operating system of the Stoics, the ancient philosophers, emperors, and statesmen who navigated war, plague, exile, and political turmoil not with wishful thinking, but with an unbreachable logic. They understood a fundamental truth that we have forgotten. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can, with rigorous practice, achieve absolute control over how you respond. And in that response lies the key to transforming every setback into a stepping stone. I learned this the hard way. For 20 years, I was a general in that unwinnable war. I built a tech company from the ground up, fueled by caffeine, ambition, and a mortal terror of falling behind. On paper, I was the model of success. We had record profits, industry awards, the respect of our peers. But inside, I was a refugee in my own mind. Every potential client loss felt like a personal attack. Every software bug felt like a referendum on my competence. I was wealthy, but I was never at peace. My internal state was entirely dependent on the chaotic whims of the market, the performance of my employees, and the approval of others. Then came the crucible. A market correction wiped out 40% of our valuation in a single quarter, and a key partner, someone I trusted implicitly, walked away, taking a major client with him. Externally, it was a business problem. Internally, it was annihilation. The burnout that followed didn't just cost me my health, it cost me my identity. Because my identity was built on the sand of external validation. Stripped of everything I thought defined me, I stumbled upon the writings of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled the most powerful empire in the world while privately journaling about his own anxieties and imperfections. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It was a thunderclap in my mind. He wasn't saying, "Be positive." He was offering a formula. He was saying that the obstacle itself, the betrayal, the market crash, the failure, contains the very fuel you need for your next evolution, if you know how to look at it correctly. This is the foundation of the Stoic mindset. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about architecting a mind that metabolizes it into strength. Over the next 8 sections, I will give you the practical, no-nonsense blueprint for doing just that. We will dismantle the fear of failure piece by piece and replace it with a logical, actionable framework. We will move from theory to practice. So, I will ask you the first of many questions on this journey. Are you merely a reactor to the events of your life? Or are you ready to become the architect of your inner world? Is the next setback going to be another scar, or will it be the stone you use to build your fortress? The citadel and the storm, mastering the dichotomy of control. The first and most crucial tool in the Stoic arsenal is a simple but profound sorting mechanism. The philosopher Epictetus, a man born a slave who became one of the most respected thinkers in Rome, stated it with piercing clarity. Some things are within our power, while others are not. This is the dichotomy of control. It's the firm, bright line you must draw in the sand of every situation. On one side, you have your thoughts, your judgments, your choices, your actions, your inner world. On the other side, you have everything else: the economy, the weather, the opinions of others, the outcome of your efforts, your health, your reputation. Everything external. The Stoics' first job in the face of any setback, a lost promotion, a financial loss, a negative review, is to perform this triage. What part of this situation is mine to command, and what part is the storm I must simply endure? This sounds simple, but it is the most violated principle of modern life. We spend the majority of our energy trying to command the storm. We rage against the traffic. We obsess over what a colleague thinks of us. We are emotionally destroyed when a project we poured our heart into does not get the reception we hoped for. This is insanity. It's like trying to shout a hurricane into changing course. The Stoics would say this is the root of all our suffering, a fundamental confusion about what is truly ours. Your inner world is your citadel. Everything outside of it is the weather. You don't control the weather, but you are the absolute sovereign of the citadel. I remember a moment during the dot-com bust of the early 2000s. Our company was on the verge of collapse. Our burn rate was astronomical, and our next round of funding had just evaporated as the market panicked. I spent weeks in a state of frantic, sleepless anxiety. I was trying to control everything: the fearful investors, the nervous employees, the global financial sentiment. I was trying to command the storm. One night, after staring at a spreadsheet for hours, watching the red numbers bleed across the page, I was completely defeated. I remembered something I had read from Seneca. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. I realized my suffering wasn't just about the numbers. It was about my judgment of the numbers. My judgment was, I have failed. My reputation is ruined. I am a terrible leader. I decided to try an exercise. I took a piece of paper and drew a line down the middle. On one side I wrote, outside my control: the stock market, investor panic, competitors' actions, the global recession. On the other side I wrote, within my control: how I communicate with my team tomorrow, the integrity with which I conduct layoffs, if it comes to that, my decision to search for a bridge loan, my choice not to panic, my choice to treat my partners and family with patience and not displaced anger, the focus of my next hour of work. Suddenly, the overwhelming tidal wave of chaos resolved into a handful of actionable items. The storm was still raging, but for the first time in weeks I was standing on solid ground inside my own citadel. I could act with purpose, not panic. That shift in perspective didn't magically save the company then. We still had to downsize, but it saved me. It allowed me to lead from a place of clarity and strength, not from a place of reactive fear. This is the daily practice. When you face a setback, you must become a ruthless sorter. Train your mind to immediately ask, is this mine? Is that opinion of me within my control? No. Is the outcome of this sales pitch within my complete control? No. Is the effort, the research, and the integrity of my presentation within my control? Yes. Then that is where 100% of your energy must go. Let the rest be noise. The world will throw storms at you. That is a guarantee. Your invincibility lies not in preventing the storms, but in building a citadel so strong that the weather ceases to matter. So, my question to you is this. Look at the biggest setback you're facing right now. Where are you wasting your precious energy trying to command the storm? And what is the one thing, truly within your power, that you can focus on instead? The obstacle is the way. How to use friction as fuel. Once you have distinguished between the storm and your citadel, the next step in the Stoic process is a radical act of mental alchemy. It's not enough to simply endure the obstacle or ignore what is outside your control. The highest form of practice is to use it. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius captured this in his Meditations with one of the most powerful concepts in all of philosophy. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think of a blacksmith forging a blade. The steel doesn't become strong despite the hammer and the fire, it becomes strong because of them. The fire, the violent blows, these are not impediments to the blade. As creation, they are the process of its creation. The Stoic learns to see every failure, every setback, every difficult person, not as a roadblock, but as the hammer and the fire. This is the opposite of how we're conditioned to think. We believe that the ideal path to success is a smooth, frictionless journey. We want the easy sale, the supportive boss, the flawless product launch. When friction appears, a market rejection, a critical piece of feedback, a technical failure, we see it as a deviation from the plan. The Stoic sees it as the plan itself. The friction is not an unfortunate byproduct of the journey, it is the journey. The friction is what forces you to adapt, to innovate, to strengthen your approach, to build your character. Without it, you remain brittle and untested. My greatest business lesson came from my greatest betrayal. The partner who left me during that market crash, it was a devastating blow. For months, I was consumed by anger and a sense of victimhood. He had been my friend. I had trusted him. My initial judgment was purely emotional. He wronged me. He sabotaged me. This thinking was poison. It kept me stuck, powerless, and focused on an external event I could not change. It wasn't until I truly wrestled with Aurelius' ES idea that I began to see it differently. What if this betrayal wasn't the end of the story? What if it was the beginning of a new one? What if the obstacle was the way? I forced myself to analyze the situation with cold logic. The obstacle was a loss of a key client and a fractured leadership team. How could that advance action? First, the client he took was one we had become complacent with. Losing them forced us to innovate our service model and aggressively pursue new markets we had ignored. It was painful, but it made the company stronger and more diversified in the long run. Second, his departure exposed a critical weakness in my own leadership. I had relied too much on personal trust and not enough on clear, unbreakable agreements and systems. The pain of that failure became the motivation to build a more resilient operational structure. The betrayal forced me to become a better, more thorough, and less naive CEO. The poison, when analyzed and reframed, became the antidote. The roadblock became the path to a stronger business and a wiser leader. This is a mindset you must actively cultivate. When you are confronted with a setback, your first emotional reaction will be frustration or despair. Acknowledge it, but don't indulge it. Then you must immediately pivot to the strategic question. How can I use this? Your funding was cut? Good. How can you use this constraint to become more creative and resourceful? Your project was publicly criticized. Excellent. What is the kernel of truth in that criticism you can use to improve the next version? A difficult colleague is blocking your proposal. Perfect. How can you use this as a training ground to refine your skills of persuasion, patience, and strategy? This is not about toxic positivity. It's about being a strategist, not a victim. A victim is defined by what happens to them. A strategist is defined by how they respond. So, reflect on a recent failure that still stings. Stop seeing it as a dead end. Ask yourself, with the cold, impartial curiosity of a strategist, how can this specific obstacle become my way? What weakness does it expose that I can now strengthen? What new path is it forcing me to see? The view from above. Detaching from the sting of defeat. You've sorted what you can and cannot control. You've reframed the obstacle as the path. Now, you must manage the emotional fallout, the sting of ego, the shame, the frustration that lingers even when your logic knows better. The Stoics had a powerful visualization exercise for this, often called the view from above, or Plato's view. It is a practice of radically shifting your perspective, of zooming out from your immediate situation until it shrinks into its proper cosmic proportion. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, practiced this constantly to keep his own problems in check. He would imagine himself looking down upon the entire earth from the stars. seeing all the bustling cities, the scurrying people, the armies marching, the farmers tilling their fields. From that vantage point he would ask, "Where in all this vastness is my little problem? Where is the person who slighted me? Where is the business deal that went sour?" From that height, our most terrifying failures and heart-wrenching setbacks reveal themselves for what they are: tiny, transient moments in an immense and ancient tapestry. The promotion you didn't get, the investment that failed, the public criticism you received. These things feel all-consuming when we are in them. They fill our entire mental horizon. This exercise is a deliberate act of shrinking them back down to size. It's not meant to invalidate your feelings, but to contextualize them. It pulls you out of the emotional swamp of the first-person perspective and gives you the clear, detached view of a third-person observer. I used this technique relentlessly during my period of burnout. My world had shrunk to the size of my own failure. My mind was a claustrophobic echo chamber of anxious thoughts about my career, my reputation, my future. One afternoon, I went to a park, lay on the grass, and just watched the clouds drift across the sky. I started the exercise. I imagined myself rising up, looking down at my own body in the park, then rising higher, seeing the city, the state, the country as a map. I kept going, seeing the curve of the earth, the planet hanging in the blackness of space, a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark, as Carl Sagan would later say. I imagined all of human history unfolding on that sphere, empires rising and falling, generations living and dying, plagues, wars, discoveries, triumphs. And in that vast, silent panorama, I asked, "Where is my failed business partnership? Where is my lost valuation?" And the answer was, of course, nowhere. It was an insignificant blip. The shame and anxiety that had felt so solid and monumental just moments before became transparent, almost laughable in their smallness. This didn't solve my practical problems, but it broke the emotional fever. It created space for my rational mind to go to work without being drowned in the cortisol of panic and ego. It's impossible to maintain a state of white-knuckled panic when you are contemplating the Milky Way. This is a practical tool you can use anytime, anywhere. When you feel overwhelmed by a setback, take 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Begin the ascent. Rise above your body, your building, your city. See the continent, the planet, the solar system. Float in the immense silence of space and look back at that tiny blue dot. See all of history happening on it. Then place your problem within that scale. Feel it shrink. Feel the emotional charge dissipate. This is how you reclaim your calm. You don't fight the emotion, you dwarf it with perspective. This practice starves the ego, which is the part of you that suffers most from failure. The ego screams, "I am ruined." Perspective calmly replies, "This, too, shall pass." So, consider the problem that is currently causing you the most stress. Are you willing to see it from a different altitude? Can you practice this view from above today and observe how it changes the emotional texture of your setback? The premeditation of evils. Rehearsing for reality. If the view from above is a tool for dealing with the emotional aftermath of a setback, then the next practice is a form of proactive mental armor. It's one of the most counterintuitive and powerful exercises in the Stoic toolkit, premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. The Roman philosopher Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in the empire, was a staunch advocate for this. He would frequently take time to imagine the worst-case scenarios: losing his wealth, being exiled, facing the death of loved ones, his own mortality. This wasn't morbid pessimism. It was a calculated strategy of psychological inoculation. His logic was simple. The unexpected blow lands with the greatest force. By contemplating potential disasters in advance, you strip them of their power to shock and terrorize you. You have, in a sense, already lived through them. Modern society teaches the opposite. We are told to think positive, to visualize success, to never entertain negative thoughts. The Stoics would argue this creates a dangerous fragility. A mind that is only ever prepared for success is brittle. When, not if, reality deviates from that positive vision, it shatters. The Stoic, on the other hand, rehearses for difficulty. They are the pilot in the flight simulator, practicing how to handle engine failure. When the real engine fails, they don't panic. They execute the procedure they have rehearsed 100 times. Premeditatio malorum is your mental flight simulator. In my tech career, product launches were the source of my greatest anxiety. Months of work from hundreds of people all came down to a single moment. My old approach was pure positive visualization, which only increased the pressure. When bugs inevitably appeared or the initial user feedback was harsh, it felt like a complete catastrophe because it deviated from my perfect mental script. After I began practicing Stoicism, I flipped the process. Before a major launch, I would sit down with my lead engineers and project managers for what we called a pre-mortem. Instead of asking, "What will make this succeed?" I asked, "Let's imagine it's 3 months from now, and this launch has been an unmitigated disaster. What went wrong?" The answers were illuminating. The servers couldn't handle the traffic. A major security flaw was discovered on day 1. Our biggest competitor launched a similar feature a week before us. The marketing message was unclear, and users didn't understand the product. For each potential disaster, we then asked, "What can we do right now to prevent this or mitigate its impact?" We reinforced the server architecture. We did another round of security penetration testing. We prepared contingency marketing plans. By thinking through the failure in advance, we made it far less likely to happen. More importantly, we were mentally prepared for things to go wrong. When a minor server issue did arise on launch day, the team was calm. We had a plan. We had rehearsed for this. We had stripped the event of the power of surprise. The premeditation didn't make us pessimistic, it made us prepared, calm, and resilient. You must apply this to your own life. Are you preparing for a major presentation? Don't just visualize a standing ovation. Imagine your projector failing, a hostile question from the audience, or blank stares of confusion. What would you do? Rehearse your response. Are you worried about your finances? Don't just hope for the best. Spend 30 minutes contemplating a significant pay cut or a market downturn. What specific practical steps would you take? Who would you call? Which expenses would you cut first? This isn't about dwelling in fear. It's about turning vague, terrifying anxieties into concrete, solvable problems. It transforms you from a worrier into a planner. You rob failure of its greatest weapon, the element of surprise. I ask you to identify one upcoming event that causes you anxiety. Can you sit down for 10 minutes this week and conduct a personal pre-mortem? Imagine it failing completely and map out your response. How does this rehearsal change your relationship with the fear? The Architect's Journal: Deconstructing Your Reactions. We have discussed perspective and preparation. Now we come to the most critical daily practice for integrating these ideas into your very being: the Stoic Journal. This is not a diary for venting your emotions. It is a laboratory for your mind. It's where you go to dissect your impressions, challenge your judgments, and reinforce your principles. Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about events. A setback is just an event, a neutral piece of data. The pain comes from the story we immediately attach to it. This is a disaster. This means I'm not good enough. This is unfair. The journal is where you catch these automatic, often irrational judgments in the act and subject them to the cold, hard light of logic. It's where you, as the architect of your mind, examine the faulty wiring and systematically replace it. The process is simple and methodical. At the end of each day, or after a specific event has upset you, you take your journal and break the experience down into 3 parts. 1. The objective event. Describe what happened with the dispassionate accuracy of a court reporter. Stick to the bare facts. Not "my boss humiliated me in the meeting," but during the 10 a.m. meeting, my boss stated that my sales figures were below target and asked me to explain why. Remove all emotional language and judgment. 2. My initial judgment impression. Write down the immediate story you told yourself. He thinks I'm incompetent. Everyone on the team heard it. My reputation is shot. I'm going to be fired. This is a catastrophe. Get it all out on the page. 3. The Stoic analysis. This is where you become the philosopher. You challenge your initial judgment using the tools we've discussed. You apply the dichotomy of control. Was his opinion of me in my control? No. Were the sales figures entirely in my control? No. Market conditions play a role. Was my preparation and effort in my control? Yes. How did I do there? You apply the obstacle is the way. How can I use this? This feedback, however poorly delivered, is data. It's highlighting a weakness I can now address. This is an opportunity to improve my sales strategy or communication skills. You apply the view from above. In 5 years, will this one comment in one meeting matter? In the grand scheme of my entire life, how significant is this moment? I began this practice during my recovery from burnout, and it was the single most effective habit for rewiring my anxious mind. I remember one specific entry. A promising startup we were considering acquiring had just accepted an offer from a larger competitor. My initial judgment was a storm of anger and self-recrimination. I was too slow. I misread the situation. Our top rival beat us, and now they will dominate the market. I failed. It was a spiral of catastrophic thinking. That night, I put it through the analytical process in my journal. Objective event. Company X accepted an acquisition offer from Company Y. My judgment? I failed. We lost. This is a disaster. Analysis? What was in my control? The diligence we performed, the offer we made, the speed of our internal process. What was not in my control? The other company's decision, their relationship with our rival, the rival's ability to offer more money. The obstacle, we lost this target. The way, this frees up our capital for a different, perhaps better acquisition. It also provides valuable data on our rival's current strategy. From the view above, in the 10-year history of our company, will this one missed acquisition be the defining moment? Unlikely. By the end of the entry, the emotional charge was gone. The disaster had been demoted to a business event, one that was manageable and contained lessons for the future. I had moved from being a victim of the event to a student of it. This is not a one-time fix. It is a daily, disciplined practice. It is the mental equivalent of a craftsman honing a tool. Each journal entry sharpens your ability to separate fact from fiction, to see events clearly, and to choose a rational, virtuous response over a knee-jerk emotional one. Your mind, left untrained, will automatically create the most dramatic and negative stories possible. Your journal is the training ground where you prove it wrong. Will you commit to this practice? Can you take one frustrating event from today and run it through this 3-step analysis tonight, simply to see what happens? Forging the iron mind. Failure as the raw material of character. We have now covered the core Stoic tactics for handling setbacks: reframing, perspective, and practical rehearsal. But I want to introduce a deeper, more profound layer to this philosophy. This is an insight that moves beyond simply managing failure and begins to see it as essential and even desirable. The goal is not just to build a mind that can withstand adversity. The goal is to build a mind that is forged by it. This is what I call the iron mind. Iron isn't found in a pure and useful state. It's locked in ore, mixed with earth and rock. To become steel, it must be subjected to unbearable heat, hammered relentlessly, and plunged into cold water. The impurities are burned away, and the underlying structure is made strong and resilient through the very process of intense stress. Your character is the same. A life without failure, without setbacks, without painful lessons, is a life of soft, unrefined ore. It has no strength, no integrity, no tested virtue. It is the intense pressure of failure that burns away your arrogance, your complacency, your naivete. It is the hammer of adversity that tempers your patience, your courage, and your humility. The Stoics understood that virtue, things like wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, is not a theoretical concept. It is a practical skill that can only be developed through application in difficult circumstances. You don't learn courage by reading about it. You learn it by facing what you fear. You don't develop wisdom in times of ease, you develop it by navigating complexity and making difficult choices after a failure. Therefore, a setback is not just an opportunity to learn a strategic lesson for your business or career. It is a curriculum for your soul. It is a chance to practice being the person you claim you want to be. It is easy to be calm and generous when everything is going your way. But who are you when the funding dries up? Who are you when you are publicly criticized? Who are you when you are betrayed? That is the true test of your character. That is the forge. The failure is not the verdict, your response to it is. I look back at the man I was before my burnout, successful, driven, and admired, and I see how weak he was. His confidence was a house of cards, built on market performance and the praise of others. He was all ore, no iron. The burnout, the betrayal, the financial loss, that was the fire. It was excruciating. It burned away everything that was not essential. What was left was the opportunity to rebuild myself on a foundation of solid rock, on principles, not profits. I had to learn to source my self-worth from my own actions and judgments, not from the numbers on a screen. That failure was the most important and valuable event of my life. It was the raw material that allowed me to forge the mind I have today, a mind that is calmer, more resilient, and more purposeful than my younger, more successful self could have ever imagined. This is the ultimate reframe. When you truly internalize this, you stop dreading failure. You don't seek it out, but you recognize it as an indispensable part of your growth. You see each setback as a new workout in the gymnasium of character. Each difficult conversation is a chance to practice patience. Each unexpected problem is a chance to practice creativity. Each loss is a chance to practice the dichotomy of control. You start to see life not as a series of events to be enjoyed or endured, but as a continuous training ground for becoming a better, stronger, more virtuous human being. Ask a deeper question. What virtue is this setback asking me to cultivate? What impurity in my character is this fire burning away? The Stoic Scorecard, your new definition of victory. We have arrived at the final and perhaps most liberating piece of this operating system. The last step is to completely demolish the world's definition of success and failure and replace it with your own. I call this the Stoic Scorecard. The world's scorecard is brutally simple. It measures externals. Did you get the money? Did you win the promotion? Did you get the public acclaim? On this scorecard, your worth is forever tied to outcomes that are, as we've established, largely outside of your direct control. It is a recipe for anxiety and a fragile sense of self. The Stoic Scorecard is internal. It measures only what is within the citadel of your own control, your intent, your effort, and your character throughout the process. The key question is not, did I win? But did I play my part well? Did I act with courage? Did I treat others with justice and respect, even my opponents? Did I apply reason and logic to the best of my ability? Did I endure the outcome with grace and composure? On this scorecard, you can have a successful day even when you suffer a massive external failure. Conversely, you can achieve a huge external victory and know on your own internal scorecard that you failed because you compromised your integrity, acted out of fear, or treated people poorly to get there. This concept is beautifully illustrated by a story about the Stoic philosopher and statesman Cato the Younger. He was a staunch defender of the Roman Republic against the rising power of Julius Caesar. In the end, Caesar won. Cato lost everything: his political cause, his allies, his life. By the world's scorecard, he was an absolute failure. His entire life's work ended in defeat. But for 2,000 years, he has been held up as a Stoic ideal. Why? Because while he lost the war, he never lost himself. He acted with unwavering integrity, courage, and dedication to his principles right to the very end. On the Stoic scorecard, he was victorious. He controlled the only thing that truly mattered: his own character. This shift in perspective is the key to unshakable inner peace. When I was running my company, I used to live and die by the quarterly earnings report. That was the scorecard. A good quarter meant I was a success. A bad quarter meant I was a failure. It was a roller coaster of emotional volatility. Today, my scorecard is different. At the end of the day, I review my actions, not my results. Did I approach my work with focus and purpose? Did I treat my clients and my team with fairness and respect? When I faced an unexpected problem, did I respond with logic and calm or with panic and anger? Did I live up to my own principles? If the answer is yes, then the day was a success, regardless of whether a deal closed or a project succeeded. This is not an excuse for laziness or incompetence. On the contrary, this internal scorecard demands a higher standard of excellence. It is far easier to chase an external result by any means necessary than it is to hold yourself to a consistent standard of virtuous action in every single moment. But by focusing on the process, your actions, your choices, your character, you paradoxically increase your chances of achieving good outcomes while simultaneously detaching your sense of worth from them. You become like the archer Seneca described. The archer's goal is to shoot well. Hitting the target is to be wished for but not guaranteed. The archer controls the stance, the aim, the release of the string. A sudden gust of wind, outside his control, might divert the arrow. The master archer judges himself on the quality of the shot, not on whether the wind intervened. This is your final task. Throw out the world's scorecard. Create your own, based on your own values. Define what a good day means in terms of your own actions, not external validation. Judge yourself by the quality of your effort, the integrity of your intent, and the character of your response. When you do this, you can no longer fail. You can have setbacks. You can have undesired outcomes. But you, the commander of your own inner citadel, can never truly be defeated. My final question to you is this: what will be on your new scorecard? What are the virtues and actions you will measure yourself against, starting today, that are entirely within your power to control?